Someone gave a motorhome the soul of a private jet and then painted it in the darkest black you've ever seen. Look at this thing. Not a supercar, not a yacht, not a private terminal, a motorhome. And somehow it's more intimidating than all three. Now, full transparency up front before we go any further. What you're looking at is an AI-generated concept design. No manufacturer built this, no factory is producing it, no showroom has it sitting behind velvet ropes. It's pure imagination, rendered into something that looks so real, so considered, so intentional, that it genuinely deserves a serious breakdown. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going full walk around. The exterior, every surface, every light signature, every design decision. Then we're going inside. Or at least we're going to figure out what's almost certainly happening in there based on everything the outside is telling us. Then the powertrain logic. And then my honest verdict. But here's the thing I want you to stay for. There is one specific detail on the side of this vehicle that I think is genuinely ahead of where production motorhomes are today. Not conceptually ahead, years ahead. I'm saving it for when we get there. Don't go anywhere. Let's start right at the front, because the front of this concept is making a statement that most vehicles spend their entire design budget trying to achieve. The first thing that hits you is that grille. It's massive, it's geometric, it's structured like a honeycomb wrapped in aggression, and it runs the full width of the nose with amber DRL strips cutting horizontally through it like laser lines. Now, in a traditional motorhome, the front face is usually the weakest part of the design. It's an afterthought, a flat wall you drive behind. This concept absolutely refuses that convention. The front face here has the kind of visual authority you'd expect from a high-end luxury SUV, maybe more. There are angular cheekbone cuts flanking the grille, pulling your eye outward and downward toward a lower splitter section that is sharply sculpted, almost like a front bumper you'd see on a performance sedan. The headlight clusters sit wide and low, and they're not round, not square, they're a deliberate angular form that echoes the grille geometry. Everything on this front face is speaking the same design language. That coherence alone puts this concept in rare territory. Now, the windscreen. That windscreen is enormous, and it's wrapped. It curves slightly around the upper corners, which does two things simultaneously. First, visually, it softens what would otherwise be a very hard-edged front face and creates an almost helmet-like quality, like you're looking at something designed to cut through the world rather than just sit in it. Second, and this is the human benefit, from the driver's seat, that glass gives you a panoramic forward view that most motorhome drivers can only dream about. You're not peering through a narrow letterbox windshield at the road ahead. You are surrounded by it. That matters when you're navigating a vehicle this size through mountain passes or city streets. It's not just beautiful, it's functional confidence. The roofline. This is where I need you to look carefully, because it's not flat. It starts from the very top of that windshield and it flows. It has a very slight but deliberate arc that runs the full length of the vehicle before beginning a gradual, controlled taper toward the rear. That is not accidental. A flat roofline on a vehicle this long would trap air and create enormous aerodynamic drag, the kind that eats range and makes highway driving feel like you're towing a billboard. This curved roofline is actively managing airflow across the top of the vehicle, encouraging air to stay attached to the surface longer rather than breaking away into turbulent separation. In practical terms, that means better efficiency, better stability at speed, and a quieter cabin. The physics are real. The physics work, and they did it without making the roofline look like an engineering compromise. It looks intentional. It looks right. Now, the side profile, and this is where this concept starts to reveal its real personality. The body is finished in what appears to be a deep obsidian piano black, and I want to talk about this choice for a moment, because it's doing a lot of work. Piano black on a vehicle this large is a risk. Every surface imperfection shows. Every reflection from the environment tells a story. But what it also does when it's rendered this way is make the vehicle look like it was carved from a single piece of material, like a monolith, like something that arrived rather than something that was assembled. And running through that black, from front to rear, are these razor-thin gold or amber accent lines, subtle, continuous, horizontal, that trace the shoulder of the vehicle like a signature. One line along the upper body, one along the lower. They give your eye a path to follow, and they make this vehicle look longer, sleeker, more drawn out than its actual dimensions. That's intelligent design, using line and light to reshape perception. The stance. Multi-axle rear, you can see the dual rear wheels clearly from this angle, and this is important. A vehicle living space this size needs that structural support, but the designer hasn't left those rear wheels looking industrial or utilitarian. The multi-spoke black alloy wheels are enormous. They fill the arches completely, and they're finished in the same dark palette as the rest of the vehicle. No chrome, no bright work, just deep black spokes on deep black paint. The effect is that this vehicle looks like it's wearing dress shoes to a track day. Formal, but ready. The body sculpting along the lower flanks is sharp and directional, angular cuts that catch light and shadow in a way that gives this otherwise monolithic black surface a sense of depth and movement even when the vehicle is standing completely still. The exterior alone makes this one of the most commanding concepts I've analyzed. But honestly, the exterior is the easy part. What I think is happening inside this vehicle is where things genuinely get fascinating. And honestly, based on what the outside is telling us, I wasn't prepared for how considered this interior logic probably is.
Here's how I approach the interior when we can't see it directly. And this is my favorite part of concept analysis because it's detective work. The exterior of a thoughtfully designed vehicle always tells you what the interior is doing. Every proportion decision, every roofline angle, every window placement is a clue. And this one is leaving some very interesting clues. Let's start with the ceiling height, because that roofline arc I mentioned earlier is telling us something specific. Based on the exterior proportions, particularly the height of that windscreen relative to the overall vehicle silhouette, this concept appears to be targeting something in the range of full standing height throughout the habitable section. That is not a small thing. In a motorhome, ceiling height is the single most important factor in whether a space feels like a home or a camper. The difference between 1.8 meters and 2.0 meters of interior height is the difference between ducking into your kitchen and walking into your kitchen. It's the difference between living somewhere and surviving somewhere. If my read of these proportions is correct, and I think it is, this concept has made that call. Full stand-up living throughout. That changes everything about how the interior could be laid out. Now, the side glass. Look again at the window running along the habitable section of the vehicle. It's not a porthole. It's not a small privacy strip. It appears to be a continuous band of glass running a significant portion of the living area's length, set high enough for privacy, but large enough to flood the interior with lateral light. When you think about what that means for daily life inside this thing, waking up in the morning, sitting at a table, reading, working, you're not in a box. You're in a room that knows where it is. You can feel the landscape outside even when you're not looking directly at it. That quality of ambient, natural light is something that separates genuinely well-designed living spaces from ones that just technically function, and this concept seems to understand that instinctively. Let's walk through the layout logic as I'd imagine it. The cockpit sits behind that massive wraparound windshield, and based on the interior visible in the windscreen in this image, we can see what appears to be a premium driver environment. High-back chairs, a clean dash layout, possibly a curved digital display arc across the front. The cockpit appears to be properly separated from the habitable space, which is a design principle that matters more than people realize. When the driver's zone is architecturally distinct, it does two things. It gives the driver a focused professional environment, and it gives everyone else in the living area the psychological feeling of being in a room rather than sitting behind a driver. That separation is a luxury in itself. Moving into the living area, the length of the habitable zone based on these exterior proportions suggests significant layout flexibility. I'd expect a lounge section immediately behind the cockpit transition, probably facing forward or arranged laterally with seating that converts. In a concept with this design philosophy, this level of restraint and intentionality on the outside, I'd expect the interior to follow the same language. No maximalist clutter, clean surfaces, integrated storage behind panels that are flush and seamless so the space reads as open and uninterrupted. The kind of interior where everything is hidden until you need it, and the room feels twice as large because of it. The kitchen in a space like this would almost certainly be galley format, running along one side, fully integrated, with induction surfaces and appliances that sit flush with the counter when not in use. In a vehicle with this exterior precision, I can't imagine the designer allowing a bulky exposed microwave to sit on a counter. Everything would recess. Everything would disappear when not needed. That's the philosophy this exterior is promising. Sleeping quarters in a vehicle this proportioned would likely be mid to rear placement, with the bedroom either permanent island format or a room that closes off entirely from the living zone via a sliding partition. The privacy logic would lean toward genuine separation, not just a curtain. A concept this serious about luxury isn't closing off the bedroom with fabric. That's a wall. That's a door. The bathroom, always the engineering puzzle in a mobile living space, would need to solve water management, waste, ventilation, and spatial efficiency simultaneously. In a vehicle this height and width, there's actually room to do something genuinely impressive here, potentially a wet bath layout that functions more like a compact boutique hotel bathroom than a standard RV wet room. Heated floors, a proper rainfall fixture, materials that feel like they belong in an apartment, not a campsite. That's not impossible at this scale. That's a design choice, and based on everything this exterior is telling us, they made that choice. Smart climate, connectivity, scene lighting, all of this would be integrated invisibly. In a concept with this level of design discipline, you're not looking at knobs and switches on the wall. You're looking at touch surfaces, gesture controls, possibly voice-activated environmental systems, the kind of setup where you say the temperature you want and the vehicle figures out how to achieve it, not just from the HVAC, but from the window tinting, from the floor heating, from the ceiling ventilation, all working together. That's smart home logic applied to a rolling chassis. And this exterior of this concept absolutely demands that level of thinking inside.
Let's talk about what would actually need to power something like this, because this is where the concept gets genuinely interesting from an engineering standpoint, and also where the fictional nature of it actually works in its favor. A vehicle this size, this weight, with a living space this considered, in any real world build scenario, you're almost certainly looking at a full electric or hybrid electric powertrain. The days of a luxury concept this refined being pitched around a diesel engine are over. The design language here is too clean, too quiet, too intentional for combustion to make sense. This concept reads electric, every surface of it. If this were engineered for reality, and I mean a near future reality, maybe 5 to 10 years from where we are, the powertrain would likely need to be a dual or tri-motor setup distributed across those axles, probably drawing from a large format battery pack that, based on this vehicle's footprint, could plausibly be in the 400 to 600 kilowatt hour range. For context, that is a lot of energy storage. The closest real-world equivalent is what some electric semi-truck programs are targeting. But in a vehicle designed for living rather than maximum cargo, you'd trade some of that capacity for the systems that make the living space work. Climate, water heating, lighting, tech infrastructure. The roof of this concept, look at the top of that arcing roofline, the surface area up there is significant. If someone were brave enough to actually build this, that roof would be a prime candidate for integrated solar. Not enough to power the drivetrain on its own, but more than enough to meaningfully extend off-grid capability for the living systems. Running your refrigeration, your lighting, your climate management, your water heating on solar while parked, that's genuinely achievable at this scale. And in a concept this focused on self-sufficiency and premium experience, it's almost a design obligation. Range, hypothetically, in a vehicle this aerodynamically shaped with a properly sized battery, you could be looking at something in the 300 to 400 kilometer real-world range with the living systems running. That's enough for serious road trip capability between charging stops, and the trend in fast charging infrastructure is making those stops shorter every year. The technology to make all of this work doesn't fully exist yet at this exact scale, but the trajectory of the industry is pointing directly at it. And that's what makes a concept like this worth analyzing seriously. It's not science fiction. It's engineering that's 3 to 5 years ahead of production reality. All right, here's my honest take. This is one of the most visually coherent motorhome concepts I've worked through, and I want to be specific about what I mean by that, because visually coherent sounds like a polite compliment, but it's actually a high bar. Most concept vehicles look impressive in one angle and then lose the plot somewhere else. A dramatic front face that leads into a generic side profile, a beautiful roofline that doesn't connect to the rear design. This concept doesn't do that. The design language, the black monolith philosophy, the amber line signature, the sculptural lower bodywork, the helmet windshield, it carries front to back. The story is consistent. What I find most impressive, and this is the detail I promised you in the opening, is that continuous light signature along the shoulder. That single amber gold horizontal line tracing the body from front to rear is doing something that production motorhomes have never seriously attempted at this level of refinement. It's not a decorative stripe, it's a visual identity device. The kind of thing where you see it on a highway at night, just that line, and you know exactly what that vehicle is. Brand recognition through light geometry. That's something automotive brands spend decades and millions trying to achieve, and this concept just has it. What would I question? The all black exterior, as much as I love it aesthetically, is a practical challenge in warm climates. Black absorbs heat. A vehicle this large parked in summer sun is going to create a solar loading problem for the interior climate systems that lighter colors would avoid. In a real production scenario, you'd want this available in deep navy or a dark graphite that reads black but reflects more thermal energy. Small criticism, real one. What would I change personally? I'd want more rear glass. The rear of this concept, based on what we can see, is more closed than the front, and I think a vehicle with this much design confidence could carry a panoramic rear window that floods the living space with rearward light and gives occupants that connection to the landscape behind them. That rear view, the road you've already been on, disappearing into wherever you came from, that's a cinematic moment. This concept is close to earning it. What does this concept say about where luxury mobility is heading? It says that the future of road living isn't about adding more features to existing form factors. It's about rethinking the identity of the vehicle entirely. This doesn't look like an RV that got an upgrade. It looks like something that decided RVs weren't ambitious enough, and that's a fundamentally different starting point. That starting point is where the most interesting things get designed. This will never exist exactly as you've seen it today, and honestly, that's fine. That's not the point. The point is what it makes you think about, and I've been thinking about that amber light line since the moment I first looked at this image. Now, here's my question for you in the comments. If you could change one thing about this concept's exterior, just one, what would it be? Color? Roofline? Wheels? Something else entirely? Drop it below. I read every comment and I want to know what your eye catches that mine might have missed. And look, if this kind of deep dive concept analysis is what you come to YouTube for, there's a lot more of it on this channel. Hitting subscribe takes 2 seconds and it's the easiest way to make sure you don't miss the next one, because the next concept makes this one look understated.